Tonight on Canton Confidential, shattered evidence and tested patience.
It's listed as broken drinking glass.
On day 6 of the Karen Reed murder trial, putting together the pieces of what happened that deadly day, including how a broken red taillight ended up on the scene.
It was about 6 to 8 feet into the yard.
Was it planted, or did melting snow uncover a hidden truth?
A lot of the ground had been revealed.
As prolonged procedures and relentless objections test the judge's patience.
Let's move this case along.
We are breaking it all down right now on Canton Confidential, the Karen Reed murder trial.
We are getting deeper into testimony. Thanks for being with us once again. I'm Glenn Jones.
I'm JC Monahan. We've heard from more than a dozen witnesses so far, but there is a long way to go. In terms of testimony, most of it has been centered around the morning Officer John O'Keefe's body was found.
Most of the witnesses have been Canton first responders. So far, the prosecution has spent a lot of time explaining the snow and bad weather conditions that day, while the defense has spent much of its time focused on the police work. Our Kirsten Glavin is live in Denham outside the courthouse tonight.
Kirsten, the day began where it left off yesterday with Canton Police Sergeant Sean Good on the stand.
That's right, and 3 Canton police officers ultimately took the stand today, but it was one lieutenant in particular whose credibility was thoroughly dissected by Reed's defense. Opening an evidence box.
Property number 22.
Lieutenant Michael Lank showing the jurors a cocktail glass discovered by investigators on Fairview Road near where John O'Keefe's body was found.
And it's listed as broken drinking glass.
Later, additional evidence.
It's a close-up picture of the piece of plastic.
And this piece of taillight allegedly discovered by Canton's police chief as he was driving down the road days later.
Chief Berkowitz brought my attention to a piece of red glass that was about 6 to 8 feet off the into the yard.
But conflict of interest and credibility once again called into play by Karen Reed's defense team.
You may use this evidence to the extent that you find it credible in deciding whether there was any bias or favoritism on the part of the police in their investigation in this case.
Bringing up a 22-year-old case involving Lank and the Albert family. Brian Albert is the property owner where O'Keefe was found dead. His brother, Chris Albert, a longtime friend of the lieutenant. The incident allegedly involved Lank helping Chris Albert when a fight broke out, and police reports not filed until days later.
Is that an example of you using your position as a police officer to come to the aid of one of the members of the Albert family?
It was me coming to the aid of a citizen who was terrified and scared for him and his family on that night.
Who happened to be Chris Albert.
Back to the trial at hand. Lank accused of describing O'Keefe's injuries to that of a fight, but then not investigating if a fight had occurred.
You said, quote, "I'm not sure if he's been in a fight or whatever. Our medics don't believe he's going to make it."
Correct.
Lank scrutinized further for not separating witnesses in the house.
When you interviewed Ms. McCabe that second time, were Brian and Nicole Albert there?
Yes.
Were they within earshot?
Yes.
And they listened to that conversation as well?
Yes.
Leaving court, the defense again highly critical of testimony.
I think that it's sort of, consistent with the other witnesses, which means it's inconsistent. A lot of it didn't make sense, and I think we're making the progress that we need to make.
Now, I also asked the defense outside of court about them questioning police in terms of whether the basement was searched or not. That's something that we heard a couple times today. Now, they said that's something that they're going to get to in this trial and they're working up towards. But we can tell you, based on documents we've read and what we've already heard in court, that they are planning to introduce some type of altercation may have happened in the basement, also referencing misplaced furniture down there as well. So that's something we're going to hear more of, most likely as this trial moves forward. Glenn, JC, back to you.
Kirsten Glavin live at the courthouse tonight. Thank you. We're joined now by criminal defense attorney Peter Ellikin. He has his own firm here in Boston. Welcome to Canton Confidential.
Terrific to be here, sir.
All right, let's talk about the lawyering first. The prosecution is, of course, putting on its case right now, mostly through the testimony of first responders, Canton police officers. Meantime, the defense on cross is trying to expose sloppy police work and a potential cover-up and conflicts of interest. Which side is advancing its objectives better right now, do you think?
I'd have to vote for defense at this point. And keep in mind, trials, the prosecution goes first. And when I do a jury trial, I always say, keep in mind, you're going to hear all the other side, and you have to wait for the defense side at the very end of it. However, the best the defense can hope for is to knock some holes or shoddy police work, that kind of thing. But I think it's really falling into the hands of the defense at this point.
Because they're successfully poking holes.
Yes, they are. I mean, for example, you have the strongest part of the prosecution, of course, is they're saying that she made incriminating statements saying, oh, I did it. And yet then they're cross-examining. They're saying to the police officers, did you tell anybody when she admitted this? I mean, they have a police officer, imagine this, on the scene, sees a dead body, somebody confesses to it, and then the police officer writes his first report, doesn't mention there's a confession, says, oh, oversight. I mean, that's the kind of thing that they're knocking the holes into it. One other great example is that the prosecution, one of their main things is that she backed the car into him and smashed the red tail light, and and the defense is all. This is kind of falling into the defense theory too, that all these first responders, they did inspections of the ground around there. They even got a leaf blower. They didn't find any pieces of 45 pieces of tail light. That many hours later they take the car, the police, and it's impounded, and whatever they do with it, and then hours later they say, oh, there's 45 pieces here. We can even see it driving the road, and that falls right into the argument the defense is making that some of this is planted afterwards. So I think that the defense we don't expect them to do that well usually early in the case, but I think they're really doing the best that they can in knocking the police work, particularly they're complaining about shoddy police work.
As we're talking about evidence, let's just talk for a moment about those red Solo cups from yesterday's testimony. Yeah. As a defense attorney, if you learn that is one of the evidence receptacles, do you think that's a vulnerability in the prosecution's case, and do you attack it at trial?
Absolutely. The optics are terrible. I mean, wouldn't the average police department have some kind of, regular evidence bags and evidence, in their own containers to seal and so that, you can't knock it afterwards? And instead, they're looking around. They got a Stop and Shop bag. They have those red things that every teenager has when they're trying to drink beer. Right. And they're throwing they're collecting, they said, blood and putting it in there. And it's just part of the building blocks of the defense that they're saying this crime scene was not at all secured. People are trampling through it. You have that leaf blower blowing it through there. They don't, the police don't, he's found outside of a house where he was supposed to be going into, and yet they didn't do a search of the house or inspection of the house. And they've got all kinds of errors on their police reports. And so the defense is really making hay of that, and they keep knocking, shoddy police work. Therefore, can we believe the prosecution?
All right. Well, that's a good perspective from this criminal defense attorney. Peter, thank you. Don't go anywhere. We're going to hear a lot more from you coming up. When we return, we'll be joined by courtroom insider Sue O'Connell, the judge in this case, voicing her frustration during testimony. She's been in the courtroom, and she'll explain what's causing that tension. That's when we come back.
Good morning, jurors. So I apologize for the delay this morning. Okay, the objection sustained.
May we approach?
Okay.
May we approach, Justice, to that?
Yes.
While I'm waiting for that, may I approach?
Yes. Jurors, I'm going to send you out for 5 minutes, okay? So I thought you were going to cut them. Apparently, you probably don't have scissors. I mean, this just came in with the whole report on it.
There were subsequent police reports filed.
So I don't have those.
Your Honor,
go ahead.
Respectfully.
All right, I'll give you all a 5-minute break, and then we have to get going. So, Mr. Jackson, you did this in 10 minutes yesterday. I don't expect you to take 2 hours to do this, okay? And just as an aside again, let's not waste the jury's time with repetitive testimony.
I don't intend to, Your Honor. I think I understand.
Those are just some of the snippets from today when court was held up or delayed for one reason or another. Judge Canoni making it clear, as you just heard, she doesn't want to be wasting the jurors' time. Well, joining us now is our trial analyst, Sue O'Connell. So between the numerous sidebars and the voir dire that we've had, and you can hear the frustration, it seems, in Judge Canoni's voice. Did you feel that as well? To be fair, we put them all together tightly, but it was only a half day today of testimony, and that was a lot of like, sure.
Yes. I mean, I have been expressing since about the second day of testimony that if I hear one more time it snowed and it was windy, and I understand, obviously, prosecution has to set this up. They're telling the story. You have to be repetitive in order for the jury to get it. But it has been repetitive testimony, also with defense, but not just quite as much as prosecution. We've also seen some real inelegant handling of the exhibits that they are putting in for evidence. And usually, a lot of this gets done ahead of time, but evidence comes up during the trial. And she's being very protective of the jurors. I just want to be clear here. She's not trying to move it quickly or slow it down. It's just the jurors come in, they sit down, they take out their notebooks, and they get ready, and then there's a sidebar, and then they sit there. And then they have to get sent out while they talk about things in the courtroom that the jurors can't hear yet. And then they come back in, and then they start, and then there's a sidebar, and then they're sitting there. So you can see today, I felt for the first time some just boredom on the face of the jury because it was a half day. They're hoping they're going to get it going and they're going to get out. So I think Judge Canoni is doing the right thing, trying to move it along and making clear there's a lot of exhibits here. I'm not saying that this is simple, but you can't introduce something that you're putting together unless you give it a number, and that whole process, that administration, is taking longer than I think she would like.
She's pointed that out. The whole idea is to keep this straight for later,
right,
so that it's not a mess. That's what had to do with cutting up certain pieces of paper that should have come in separate sections.
Right. If it's Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2 and you put them together, it's got to be Exhibit 3. It can't be Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2. So she's just trying to make sure that, this is done cleanly, and she's being very protective of the jurors, which is something about her I've noticed since jury selection.
We're going to get to a viewer question in just a moment. I just want to point out, because online I've seen a lot of people comment about hearing her sigh. That's different than what we're talking about.
Right.
That has to do with where the microphone is in relationship to literally her breathing.
Yes, you and I have both been on stage doing events, and sometimes the mic is here and you can hear yourself breathing throughout the audience. So that's not her. That's just the way the audio
But what we're talking about today were
exasperating.
Yes, where she was trying to make a point of like, okay, moving it along. Let's move this along. Because the viewer who sent in their question today here on Canton Confidential was from Sherry Dalton. Take a look at it. I'm a little confused with the courtroom setup. Why is the family of John O'Keefe sitting next to the defense team and the family of Karen Reed sitting behind? From where the one camera is in the courtroom, as you look, if you can see Karen Reed, then you can see the O'Keefe family right behind them. You can't really see many of the supporters for Karen Reed because that goes off the view for us. So we're either looking at the witness, the judge, or a long shot that goes from Karen over to the O'Keefes, which I can understand why that would be confusing.
Right. So remember, the courtroom got moved. The Alan Jackson on the defense noticed that the 4 jurors in the old courtroom couldn't see the witness straight on. The judge agreed to move to the smaller courtroom, which is not built for this. It really only holds about 60 people, as you can see right there. So it's kind of like a U shape. So the people you see back there, that's us, the press, 10 of us. And then you've got the judge in the front, and then in front of the press you've got the O'Keefe family and supporters, and then behind Karen Reed in the defense table you have her friends and family and supporters, only allowing 10 each.
It's not like we're talking about a big depth here. No. These are like 2 rows,
right,
3
2
maybe.
rows of 5 each on each side, and then you have the jury, the camera that you're looking at, the pool camera, which we all share, so there aren't lots of multiple cameras in there. There's one photographer, one video photographer, and they're behind the jury, so you can't see the jury's faces, which we're not going to show you.
Of course.
So it's a really cramped and intimate setting, and the reason you keep seeing the O'Keefe family is because that's where the camera is.
Point them out for us right here, just in case you don't know.
They're right behind those two rows of people.
Light blue shirt is the brother.
Light blue shirt is the brother. I think the mom is in the red. I'm not sure if this is today or the other day. They've been rotating through. I think that's the dad there. So they're rotating people through, as Karen Reed's people are too, but you're just not seeing her people because of the small courtroom.
So Friday they played a 911 call that was made. We've listened to it. It is a little hard when you're trying to hear it through the live stream, but you were there in court and talking about the size of the courtroom, the emotion that came from that. Let's just play, if we can, the 911 call, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Who's that in the background? Is that someone really? It's the girlfriend. Yeah, so how long have you been outside? I don't know. I don't know. He got out of the car and it could have been a couple of hours. He's carrying. I don't know if he's breathing. There are two women trying to.
Okay, I believe, Sue, that was Jennifer McCabe who was calling, the sister-in-law to Brian Albert, talking about calling 911 about finding John O'Keefe's body. But what you didn't see there was the fact that the O'Keefe family understandably got really emotional hearing that. Can you tell us a little bit about what was inaudible, at least from our view?
Yeah, you know, this was also, and I'm not saying this in a positive way, it was also sort of the most compelling and exciting testimony that we had because it's been very dry. And then you bring in these two 911 calls. We heard one from earlier, which just kind of said he didn't come home. We don't know what's happening. Another one of Karen Reed's friends called. But this you could hear in the background, the frantic efforts to try and save him from Karen and her friends who were there, that they were hysterical, that Karen was hysterical. And McCabe here is doing a good job trying to stay calm and talking to the dispatcher, Officer Good. And at one point she whispers, I think he's gone. You know, and when we heard that in the courtroom, you know, he's saying, is someone going to do CPR? Can someone do CPR? I'm paraphrasing here. And she says, I think he's gone. And that was really, you know, imagine these were his final moments. This really brought the compelling nature of the tragedy that happened here. Again, you don't have to think who did it or who didn't do it or what happened. It just was compelling, and it was really heart-wrenching.
There's a victim no matter what you think, no matter who you think did or did not do, there is a man dead at the end of this who didn't deserve to be.
Exactly.
And that moment, I think, at least that's how it seems like you're clarifying it, really came to be, that you could feel it.
Yeah, you could absolutely, you were there, you know, and that's when it transports you to what happened. It's sort of what happened when the jury went to the scene on Friday to see where the car was and where all these items were. You can read something, you can learn about something, but when you actually experience it and hear it, it really is compelling.
Sue, we know you'll be in the courtroom every day for us, so thank you. We always appreciate when we can hear it straight from you. Thank you, Sue.
Sue and JC, thank you. Ahead, legal expert Peter Ellikin is back to answer more questions and take a deeper dive into how what the judge said today could impact the trial going forward. Stay with us. This is Canton Confidential.
Welcome back. We're joined once again by Boston defense attorney Peter Ellikin.
Peter, we've spent some time talking tonight about the judge's frustration with the pace of this trial. How does the pace so far compared with other trials you've seen? And what of the judge's performance so far?
Well, actually, I think Judge Canoni has great control over this courtroom. She's really on top of it. My God, the pressure she must be under herself. Right. People are always waiting for a judge to make an error because that's going to be your appeal or whatever. And this case has more moving parts than I've ever seen in a case. So she's got to really be on top of her game, and so far, she apparently is. As far as talking to the lawyers about moving things along, yeah, I've noticed when long trials, my big fear as a trial attorney is I don't want to start to bore the jury. Start them, have them nod off or tune out or whatever on the case. And that's why some lawyers are terrible at that. They ask anything and everything under the sun and see if anything hits or sticks. And then other lawyers, I like to think I'm one of them, gets in and out like a bullet. Score your points, and when you really make the good point, get out of there quick. And because these poor jurors are really, for an 8-week trial or whatever it's going to be, you don't want them to zone out and just be bored to death from repetition. And
do you think the defense, though, is striking a bullet and pulling back out? Because part of Judge Cannoni's sort of frustration is the fact that the defense is almost creating, as Sue has gone around saying, a trial within a trial. And that's what she's sort of trying to avoid doing, which had to do with everybody's relationship with each other. They're trying to, dissect how did you know him for how long. She's trying to sort of clean line that. But it seems like the defense is taking its time, is my point.
Yeah, the defense, this is a good area the defense is really hitting away at. And it's just you're right about everybody, and as many small towns are like this, every police officer just about, or almost every first attender or whatever that is, seemed to know people inside the house, and they really wanted to hit home with a connection. You got to be quick and move in and out of that, but it's a great point they were making.
All right, thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
We got to run. We'll be right back with Canton Confidential.
Court is back in session tomorrow, a full day, and it begins at 9 a.m.
And remember, we're streaming the trial on our website, our YouTube page, as well as our sister station, NECN. And we'll see you back here at 7 for another edition of Canton Confidential. For JC Monahan, I'm Glenn Jones. Have a good night.